Hello, it's time for another video on the Bhagavad Gita. This time, once again, we're looking at a single verse. Chapter 2, verse 46, which kind of sums up a lot of the important parts of previous verses that we've touched upon. So let's take a look. That which can be found in a drop of water can also be found in the vast ocean. Likewise, all that can be known in studying religion can be understood in a true way by a man who has become aware of the Brahman, the supreme consciousness. So, if you recall from the last couple of videos, first Krishna was talking to Arjuna about what he called the false religionists. And these were the people who were engaging in a study of religious dogma and pushing of religious dogma and the practice of rituals for personal gain. And it was basically a condemnation of the religious culture that existed in these kingdoms at the time. He had talked about how false religionists engage in elaborate ceremonies in the hopes of gaining material goals. So, like what I was saying in the last video about, like the little kid praying for snow to God so that he won't have to take the test at school, right? Trying to make bargains with the divine. And we were also talking about the gunas, and the last verse introduced that very important spiritual concept of these three alchemical elements, or these three phases or levels of vibration in things that are equivalent to the Western elements of salt, mercury, and sulfur, where one is the tamas is this low and very solid and very inert kind of state, and then there's the very excited kind of state, which is its opposite, which is rajas, the state of passion, and then there's sattvas, which is the state of truth, or a kind of purity and balance, right? And how, as well as the people who are, religious dogmatists, you also have the people who are still struggling to try to perfect themselves in some way so that then they'll be just perfect, just right, and won't have to change anymore. And they do this by trying to shift their rate of vibration or their state of consciousness to this kind of more purified, rarefied state. The common understanding of the gunas is that each one is superior to the previous, and so you want to get to the highest one, and there you're going to be as great as possible. But Krishna tears that whole argument apart. He says it's not about that. It's not about trying to escape certain states of being and into other states of being within the whole concept of the self, of the ego, right? As long as you're still inside that box, you're just going around in circles, right? You're not actually accomplishing anything until you go beyond the gunas, beyond duality, into the pure state of existence. And so here in this verse, he talks about how a drop of water is also found in the vast ocean. What he's saying is everything you can accomplish with the purely intellectual or the purely, let's call it moral or vibrational or energetic or whatever states, is still only just a tiny facet of this much larger condition that can only be achieved through the state of enlightenment. So it's only by becoming aware of that supreme consciousness, the Godhead, that a person can actually get outside of being just the drop, that the drop can fall into the ocean and become a part of this much larger whole. As long as you're still only working within that little concept of the self-referencing being of the ego, then you're going to be mistaking the raindrop for the ocean. So religious dogmas, religious rules, religious books, listening to the teachings of religious teachers, including this video right now, if all you're doing is kind of sitting and processing it mentally, if all you're doing is trying to learn facts within the box of your mind, or likewise, if you're trying to only work within yourself as you are now, but trying to get to a perfected version of that you can never actually possibly achieve, because the nature of reality is constant change. So you're not going to get to like just the one thing that you have to find and you fix it and then that's it and you're going to be fine forever. It's not going to happen, right? You're still just stuck thinking about that raindrop. What you want to engage with is meditation. You want to expand your awareness. If you have a knot and it's inside a tiny box, a 1 inch by 1 inch box, and you're trying to untie that knot within that little box, it's a very, very difficult thing, right? Now, if you focus on the knot, you could be working on it and maybe you're going to improve situation or maybe you're not, but you're still going to be stuck inside that tiny little box. Now, if you expand that into a box that's, 10 meters by 10 meters, then first of all, the knot barely occupies any space there, right? It's just this tiny thing. And second, it'll be much easier to undo it or to cut it in half or to just get rid of it, right? So the answer here is not found by working within the track of where you are. You need something that jumps you outside of the track. You need a shock, a spiritual crisis that opens up your consciousness and puts you outside of that regular boundary, right? First, by growing the boundary as you know it, and eventually by jumping completely beyond it. And this is what Krishna is advocating.